A very warm welcome to you, and thank you so much for joining our Homeopathy 24/7 podcast. We are going to be speaking to an array of international guests who will share their knowledge and experiences of homeopathy with you. We will discuss all types of subjects such as remedies, symptoms, and stories of health. No matter where you are with your homeopathic journey, we aim to inspire you on your quest to natural health and living. The podcast is brought to you by Greensmith, the founder of Homeopathy 24/7, which is a global platform connecting you with a homeopath wherever you are in the world, 24 hours a day. So let's get started with today's chat. Please welcome Mary Greensmith.
Hello, thank you for joining me today. I'm really excited to be speaking with you today because we're going to do it quite differently. We are going to have a look at Metaphysical Anatomy by Evette Rose. This is quite a large book, just really going through physical symptoms and the emotional trauma attached to it. So what I'm going to do is just read out some parts of it just to get you thinking. Now, I don't necessarily believe and feel that this is going to be the be all and end all. I don't, and we're going to have a look at a few things that I've perhaps suffered with in the past, or that have come up as worth looking at. And so we can then go, yes, I do think that, I have thought that in the past. But a lot of these emotions might be subconscious. And so we therefore need to delve deep in a very safe space to be able to look further. But let's have a look and see what actually comes up. Now, I'm going to go straight to rheumatoid arthritis. And the reason for that is because I've really been suffering with my little finger joints the last few weeks. Now, the last few weeks, I just better let you know that I have been digging a garden, making a garden. I have been laying patio. I have been putting down a base for a shed. I have been working my socks off physically. So it's not surprising that my joints are suffering a little bit. I'm, coming out the wrong side of 57, I think I am. It's one of those things that it's not surprising what I'm doing, especially after having led quite a non-physical life for the last few years. And I am so excited to be able to now have a garden, to be able to do physical things, to be able to get my body back, to be able to feel much stronger, to be able to stress my body physically more rather than sat at a computer all of the time. So this is a conscious decision. I just want to explore what's happening and what I can do about it. Now, it's worth actually mentioning how much rheumatoid arthritis is in the family. My family generally suffer from osteoporosis a lot. All of my family have osteoporosis because my mum worked in the hospital. In fact, all of my family work as doctors and nurses. But when she was young, when I was in my teens, she would put herself forward for all of the tests and experiments and everything else. My grandmother had osteoporosis all of the time we were growing up. She had the hump that you associate with it. And my mum was obviously going the same way. So when I was a teenager, we were all tested as part of an experiment to see how hereditary it is. And actually, my sisters and my brother had very low bone density. It was our bone density was tested when we were in our teens, but I was okay. Now, surprisingly, my father also had thin bone density, and so did my cousins. And so I don't know what happened, but somehow I managed to miss that gene. Thank you. But my mum then, because we thought that actually with the osteoporosis, she wouldn't get rheumatoid arthritis. But one day, I remember it so distinctly, she came home from holiday. She'd been holidaying up in North Scotland, and she came home and got the lawnmower out and mowed the lawn, and her hands swelled up and really swelled, her hands and her wrists. And she went to the doctor, and they take a blood test to measure the R factor, something, the rhesus factor for rheumatoid arthritis. And while testing, they actually took a year to give her a diagnosis and medication. And she went on the medication for many years. I eventually managed to prescribe her a homeopathic remedy because she had such bad side effects from the medication that we persuaded her that actually if she could come off the medication and have some homeopathic remedies instead, then that would work really well. But that took many years. But anyway, so yes, we have got rheumatoid arthritis in the family, and yes, in the hands as well. So what I want to do is look up rheumatoid arthritis. So I'm just going to read you an extract from this book. So it says, C. arthritis, attacked, autoimmune. So it's listing a whole lot of autoimmune disease as well, with inflammation, joint problems, osteoarthritis, reactive arthritis. Emotions. You only feel recognised and noticed when you accept more responsibilities. This causes a great deal of anger, as you feel that you have to work for love. You have a deep and rigid need to be right. This may be the result of feeling ignored whenever you needed to be acknowledged or heard. You feel that no one takes you seriously, which infuriates you. Now, that's really, really interesting paragraph. I don't feel anger. I really don't often feel anger. I do feel angry. There are occasions when I feel angry. I do feel angry when things are not fair or right, or they are very restrictive for no good purpose. I hate rules for no good purpose. I was terrible at school and I do every petition going. If there were rules which did not benefit or help people in any way, I do get infuriated by that. But generally, about being recognised and noticed, I think nowadays I don't really need that, but yes, of course I need that from my husband, and I like people to. It's a really difficult one, isn't it? Because actually, I don't tell people what I do. I have such a great community online, and I talk to people all day, and so I don't need my outside influences. I don't need them to recognise me or understand me. I would like my family to recognise what I do, but they're all medical people. And really, they don't give a damn. They think I'm just a bit weird, and I go against the grain at any opportunity. And maybe I believe, because it may not be what they believe, but I believe that they believe that I'm just fighting for the sake of fighting against authority, because I do tend to do that. So let's have a little look about what else it says. So the next thing it says is you have a fear of saying no. This may cause you to be rejected or abandoned, and it may mean that you tend to bend over backwards with very little reward. You seem to push people away, setting yourself up to endure any pain on your own. Now, I'm not really sure that that suits me, but maybe it did in the past. It says that you may unconsciously feel that you deserve to be punished for being a bad person or not being good enough. The love and comfort you received as a child was traumatic, stressful, and filled with rejection, anger, or resentment. Now, actually, for me, that wasn't as a child. That was in my first marriage. I had a very, very difficult, traumatic marriage. And it, maybe some of my emotions came later with that experience. As far as my upbringing goes, it did have traumatic consequences, but I think I was fairly easygoing about it. My father was a clergy person and really did what he believed. You know, we didn't have the heating on because he would send the money away to people in Africa. He'd go to Africa and buy coffee and then bring it back and sell it. And that actually became tradecraft in the end. He really did believe what he thought, but he didn't really have time for children. Children should be seen and not heard. And it was a very strict upbringing that I had. However, I had a lot of freedom. I could go out all day and I had a pony and I did my own thing. As long as I was responsible and made sure that my siblings were looked after and fed, then everything sort of ran okay. But so where it was very rigid as far as the parents were concerned, I actually had a lot of freedom as long as I was responsible for everything. So I had responsibility from a very, very early age. But later on in life, I did experience very difficult relationships with people. And I did do anything that I could to hold the peace along the way. So I understand that that might be influencing my bones and joints now. Let's have a look to see what else we can find. Feeling controlled reminds you of a childhood trauma where you lost your emotional, mental, and physical freedom. Okay, so we can definitely take that from my first marriage. You have become addicted to feeling adrenaline as a result of arguments. You are often unconsciously provoking circumstances where you end up being attacked either verbally or physically. Well, that's an interesting point, and I don't think that applies to me at all. Because of my experience with my first marriage, I actually run away from any conflict whatsoever, as does my husband now, because he had a very similar first marriage too. So we don't argue, we just agree. If usually what happens is I say, I don't feel strongly attached to the outcome of that. I'm happy for you to, we'll go your way. And he says the same with some things. So we compromise on some things. I'll have the last say, and some other things he has the last say. We don't argue. We don't do arguing because of previous trauma. But so I can understand how this is going to fit into our lives and into my joints. Let's go on and find a different symptom. Let's have a look at allergies. It says, problems in your life often feel impossible to resolve. You have not been successful at accessing your personal power and manifesting your desires into reality. As a result, you feel like a failure with no chance in the world of achieving anything. It all seems too hard. That's really interesting. Definitely doesn't apply to me now, but I haven't got allergies now. So that's really interesting, isn't it? I grew up with a lot of allergies. I was allergic to so many things. And yeah, really interesting when they came about and when they flare. But interesting that I'm not suffering from allergies now. And actually, I do everything that I want to do in life now. I just decide what it is I want to achieve, and I go out and I get it. And that's because of my experiences in the past. Let's have a look what else it says. You often find safety in the things that you're allergic to. Think about what you have an allergic reaction to. Was that object or substance in the vicinity? when you felt fear, trauma, threatened, or out of control? Let's say, for example, you're allergic to cats. What negative emotions do you experience when you've been around the cat? The cat triggers negative associations of feeling scared, vulnerable, and threatened every time you look at a cat. That's really interesting, isn't it? I've got a really great story about when I first started training to be a homeopath, and my husband was allergic to cats. He's always hated cats, and so I don't know what went on there, but obviously something did, and Evette Rose knows about it, but I don't know. But anyway, whilst I was training, I decided, okay, you need Carb. You're such a Carb person. It was actually for a wart that he had on his finger, and he had this wart for 2 years. And I gave him Carb 30, just one dose, and he came out in a rash, and he came out in a huge rash, and it was a horrible rash. I'm so sorry, Paul, to do this to you. Please note, if you're thinking about working with me as a homeopath, I don't give all of my patients rashes, but Paul did have a rash, and it came up on his wrist and then down his chest, all around his neck, around the back of his neck and head. And it lasted a good 2 weeks. It was amazing rash. The wart, however, fell off after a week, and what have you done to me? What is going on? And I said, well, you must have had a rash before. This is an old symptom returning. He said, no, I have never had a rash. So I spoke to his mum, and it turned out that he'd had scarlet fever. So I kind of put it down to that. But interestingly, the rash obviously went away, and he was never allergic to cats after that. So very interesting story. But it makes sense that it does relate maybe to an emotion. I remember myself being allergic to paint, but I don't think that's emotion. I think paint 40, 50 years ago was so full of toxins. It was really wrecking my lungs. And when we painted a house, there were lots of kids. We had to paint the room, and we had to sleep in it. And it was just filling my lungs with toxins. And it would give me an asthma attack. And, I just think that we are also influenced by our the toxins that people have got everywhere that we are not aware of. And certainly my parents had no idea that they would put poisons and horrible things into paints. I realise now, having just painted some of my house, that actually it's totally different these days, and they have banned so many substances that it's a great thing. The world is learning. This is an interesting point it's got about the allergies. When there is an allergy, always explore the ancestral line. Often there is already present a type of trauma associated to the substance to which you're allergic to. For example, an ancestor digesting a substance and becoming very ill afterwards. The ancestor also could have digested the substance under extreme emotional duress, whilst trapped in concentration camps during wars, slavery, poverty, imprisonment. That's really, really interesting, isn't it? Now, quite often we would say with allergies, look back and see if there's tuberculosis in the family, because tuberculosis leaves such a weakness that travels through the generations and leaves such a weakness when you're born with the susceptibility. So for instance, I often say that I'm quite tubercular, and my mum certainly is very tubercular, and then one of her grandparents had tuberculosis, and you can see it through the generations, and through one of my children as well. Now, the next thing we're going to look at actually is a bee sting. So it's nothing that is going to be emotionally attached with that as a chronic illness. But let's have a look what it says with an acute sting, such as a bee sting. So, emotional. You often feel attacked either verbally or physically by people who are projecting jealousy and anger towards you. These people are in your life not by personal choice, but by some type of commitment, like marriage, work, social groups, or community groups. You feel resentment and anger towards those who pretend to like you. It is important that these people and situations are attracted to you for a reason. So you could confront your emotions and express your boundaries. That's really interesting, isn't it? So is that saying that you're only being stung because of that that reaction, or because your reaction to a bee sting? Let's have a look a little further. It says, as you are gentle by nature, you cannot cope well with harsh, stern, or aggressive relationships. You may find you are suffocating yourself with your own anger and refusal to let go of unhealthy emotional patterns. Okay, so relating that back to the last time I was stung by a bee, yes, I can understand that it could have had something to do with this. I haven't been stung since. So does it affect whether we're stung or not? Gosh, that opens up a real can of worms, doesn't it? I'm going to go back to a chronic issue now, and I've come up, just clicked through, and it's come up with breast cancer. So let's have a look at this, because often we're relating to relationships with mother if the breast cancer is on one side, and father if it's the other side. So let's have a look what Evette has to say about this. You may feel that communicating always comes at a price. You often feel conflicted by what you need to say and the ramifications of it. You may associate expressing yourself with punishment and rejection. Oh, that's really interesting. That's very interesting, because obviously, as a homeopath in a medical family, yeah, the things I want to say, especially when it, oh, try this, try this, try this, it is often met with no thanks, that doesn't work, not interested. And of course, when somebody says not interested, you can't help but feel a personal rejection. We shouldn't, but we can't help it, because it's not us they're rejecting, it's the homeopathic choice, which is fine, because everybody's got a choice. I don't have to accept mainstream medicine. And they don't have to accept homeopathy. So I should be okay with that. So how do we stop ourselves feeling that personal rejection? Because we've got to stop it, because it's affecting our health, obviously. Yvette has, got this down. It's just well worth the read. Let's have a look what else she says. Family members and public have fallen in love with your strong facade. The image that you have portrayed to the public becomes draining emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. It takes its toll. There is a great need just to be yourself, yet you fear criticism and rejection. You may have experienced a stressful or hostile relationship with your mother or your partner. These influential people may have been emotionally absent, cold, or hostile. You feel attacked by the people that should love you. You feel drained from giving and not receiving, and all the while pretending that everything is okay. So that's really interesting, isn't it? And I would definitely say that, yes, I went through a cycle of that in my 20s. And I don't have a cycle of that now at all. I think the whole experience, though, has taught me how to believe in myself and how to understand that not everybody has to agree with it for it to be okay with me. I think that's the main thing that I want to take away from this. I don't feel attacked by the people I love. I don't at all. I choose who I want to spend time with. That's what happens. And I spend time with people who believe the same things I believe. And I'm lucky enough to work with people that I can do that with, because I'm a homeopath and I only talk with people, consult with people who want homeopathy and want that to work for them. So I can fill my life with people who want to talk about homeopathy. So I just feel so blessed that all of the things that have gone on in the past are really in the past. But does it give me the understanding of what my body does now and what I need to do and what I can change? Or does it just mean that I can understand it a little bit better and actually thinking about these things really help me to move through them and to move through these symptoms? Okay, I'm just going to choose another one now, just because a lot of people suffer with it. It's not something that I've ever experienced, but heart palpitations is something that a lot of people experience, especially when anxious and stressed. So let's have a quick look at heart palpitations. You do not feel at peace with yourself or the world around you. You seem to be stuck between two instincts, running or being frozen. You often expect the worst, and this stems from a parent who used drama to instill fear and manipulate by means of guilt and shame. Your adrenal glands are often exhausted and react to any given situation that feels remotely threatening, and it's preparing your body to defend itself. It might have been that you experienced a great deal of anxiety whilst in the utero. You may have felt your mother's anxiety and stress after birth, the first time she held you. You formed a bond with her while she was in an anxious and exhausted state. You may have mimicked your mother's physical and emotional behavior during stressful circumstances, especially your birth. That's really important to understand, isn't it? And yeah, that's got so many things just to be thinking about, and working through and realizing that your body is going into this automatic reaction because it did when you were born and whilst in utero and after your birth. But that can help you overcome because you can understand. It can also help me as a homeopath because I can go back to that time and I can give you a remedy to get through that. We've got some beautiful matrimonial remedies, which are really, really useful in those first hours. So as a homeopath, this book's going to be really, really useful for me, just to have a look at which questions I need to be asking. I hope this has been useful for you, perhaps to have a look at something like this and just have a look at what trauma, what moment might have developed into a physical symptom for you. This book is by Evette Rose and is called Metaphysical Anatomy. It's a lovely book. It's going to be so interesting going through it, and I hope you've enjoyed this preview. Lovely talking to you. I hope you enjoyed going through that book review with Evette Rose. It's just such an amazing book to have a look at, see if you can find it, and enjoy learning a little bit more about physical symptoms. Now, next week, I'm going to be talking to you about my new hormonal course that we're just releasing. It is really just talking about how homeopathy and other natural commodities can help you balance your hormones. So anybody suffering from hormonal imbalance, whether that is just really heavy periods or endometriosis or PCOS or infertility, or just wants to understand a little bit more about how to balance hormones, then this course might be of interest. So we're just going to have a look at the different elements, bring them together and see what you can be doing to help create a much more balanced body. I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care. I do hope you've enjoyed these episodes, and I do hope you can subscribe to our channels. Now, there are various ways for you to listen to our podcast or watch it on video on YouTube. So whether it's iTunes, Spotify, or YouTube, please do subscribe and please do leave us a review. If you leave us a review on these platforms, then more people will see our podcast. We just want more people to share the joy of homeopathy. It's a choice that everybody should know about. Please do everything you can to help us help more people.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode and look forward to listening to our next one. Please don't forget to follow our podcast on your chosen channel, and please do leave us a review so we can continue to share homeopathy with as many people as possible. If you do have any questions, please do reach out to us on any of our social platforms mentioned in the show notes. We at Homeopathy 24/7 hope to empower you on your natural health journey.